It's a real pleasure to be here, Sarah.
It is so good to have this opportunity for you to share how you got to this place in your life. We met through Achieve and just so excited about what's taking place in that group. But you have a story that goes even before that and would love to for you to share your journey, how you got to where you are today.
Well, being the old guy in the room and that I'm in my early 70s, I reflect on life a lot. And that, we can all look at how we started out as a child and why is there air. But for me, I look back on the struggles that growing up did. I was raised without a dad, and that my mom was the rock in my life. And she literally locked the door when I wouldn't stand up for myself one time when I was a kid. The bullies in the neighborhood were picking on me, and we have to learn that we're going to get, as I refer to it, hit upside the head with life. And but we have to get back up and we have to continue on. And a lot of that was just a learning process, but now I reflect on it and I want to try to help people understand it's okay to get knocked down. But there's people out there that are honest and sincere and they want to help you succeed. So that's what I choose to do.
Hmm. When you finished high school, what did you then venture into?
I went into the Marine Corps, and that my eighth grade term paper, being in the Marine Corps. And it was during Vietnam, which was a very tumultuous time. The only fight I had with my best friend from high school was over the Vietnam War. But that's part of the growth process too, is how do we look at what we believe in, but
Mhm.
also how do we rationalize it as we go through life? And did we make the right choices? As I've come to say, there were a lot better Marines than me, but Marine Corps was kind of like kindergarten to life. It
Yes.
taught me everything else that was to come. And I mean, from the easy things of making your bed to up and pursuing forward.
Mhm. My dad was an ROTC at University of Tennessee, and he could make his bed like nobody else. I mean, and then also when he would shine his shoes for Sunday, and they were always shined for Sunday, they were spit shined. He had learned well. There were definitely lessons in there about things that you just carry into life and that you do well because you've been trained well. What were some of the experiences that you had in the Marine Corps that translated into later on you being self employed for more than 50 years? There had to have been some things that you learned in the military that helped support what you would later go on to do and be so successful with.
I think a big part of it was the strength my mom taught me. And that, when I looked at it, it was like I had a real tough time dealing with the goofballs that up in our life. And they may have been older, or they may have been a higher rank, but I fought that a lot. But that was one of the two by fours upside of my head. I had to understand that there's always going to be people in a position of authority over you. You have to learn how to deal with them.
Yes. What have been some of the ways that you have learned to deal with? I know that the middle school me just wanted to walk down a different hallway, right? To not engage, to not confront, just to try to go the long way to my locker to hopefully not have anything bad happen, whatever that happened to have been. And although it's a strategy, I'm not necessarily saying it's a great strategy. So, what were some of the ways that you learned that worked well for you as you noticed that there were people who you didn't always agree with who were in authority, and yet there was that space of respect because they held the title?
Well, there's always a lot of things. I guess some people would look at me and hear my story and say, well, you've always been an extrovert. And that my mom moved us from Cleveland to Phoenix in 66. And I was at going into the eighth grade, and they were going to elect class officers. I was there for 2 weeks. I made a big yellow and black sign that said "Vote for Frank," and everybody said, "Who the heck is this guy?" But that's how I've been. I'm kind of known as the guy that shows up. Driving's not a big deal. If I have to drive 150 miles for an hour long meeting, I'll do it, and that's weather dependent. I've always been comfortable with people. That it tied into the Marine Corps that way. Afterwards, you know, going out into the career world, I was a starving young father in the late '70s, and a friend of mine was a photographer. And at that time, photographic business cards were all the rage. And so I was going to sell him, he was going to do the photography. We went to a store and talked to him. They convinced me to go to work for him. 3 months later, the photographer's dad died and he moved back to Kansas. I went to the GM, said, I know nothing about photography, but I'll make you money. And that was like the best deal that I had in my entire career because we split the profit 50-50. But he wouldn't let me work under his store name. I had to work under my company name. And about 3 years later, he came to me and says, Mac, you're making more money than I am. I had to start taking some accounts as house accounts. A month later, I got approached to be a rep. I moved to New Mexico and started my repping business. So it's funny how life turns out. You just have to kind of go with the flow.